Hi, Sameema.
Hey, Hora.
Welcome everyone to the episode 7 of Philosophers in the Therapy Room.
We are back in the therapy room.
Yes, we're back in the therapy room. Last time it was a bit difficult to find out the right place, but now we have returned to the original place.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Sameema, what do you think that we're gonna focus on today? We had a little bit of chat in terms of how we can somehow connect whatever we have discussed in our previous episode, which was on pain and the phenomenal body. And somehow we were thinking about following the very same thread. We were thinking to stick this to the idea of constructing reality and how the way that we perceive reality and somehow participate in the constitution of the reality affect our everyday experiences. Last time it was the body that we were focusing on, and how the perception of the world and my body in the world really affects the way that I interact with my body and with my with the whole world. But what about this session?
So we were thinking of going alongside the same theme, but talking a bit, about something that we all experience in some form or the other, the loss, of someone or something, or in illness of any sort, part of your original self or part of your own being. And so it would be good to just explore what does loss mean, and how do we understand it in terms of structuring our own world. Because if you say that to someone, and no one would say that I would like to structure a world where loss is the most prominent feature of my universe. So, how do we actually construct a world where loss becomes so prominent and is so key in our understanding of the world? And so just like digging a little bit deeper into the idea of loss and how it's part of how we structure our world.
So today we're going to focus on the experience of loss, and I would actually not use grieving of the lost one, or even the lost thing, or loss of my normal being in the world when you are sick, when you're in pain, or when you have losing a limb, for example. That is very obvious because it really changes the manner that you experience the world and the space. So I prefer not to use grieving, because grieving is somehow the process of realization of the loss. So we really stick to the experience of the loss and how phenomenologically can be explained.
I think that's really important, that as you were saying, that grieving is very much, once you have that acceptance, that realization, that you start to mourn it, and that's the next step. We first want to actually construct what it means to lose something, and that's like a, when you start looking into it, it's just like, to use my son's language, mind-boggling. But what actually loss is, and that's such a huge phenomena, and yet it's hard to explain in words. So we will try to do the job of explaining the unexplainable a bit here.
Hopefully, yes.
And I thought that we can go to Jean-Paul Sartre for a change from our German tradition jumping to a French tradition. But however, Sartre is very much inspired by Husserl, Heidegger, so coming from that place. Although we did visit Merleau-Ponty earlier, so it's not the first time.
We had
and even Camus. So it would be good to start thinking about Sartre. But before that, I thought let's quickly revisit how generally people think that we experience the world. Just common way of thinking about our way of experiencing the world. And we can use a simple example of, when we come into this room, how do I experience this room? So the general understanding would be there's furniture here already sitting there, couple of things, a person sitting here, a setup here. And when I come here, I notice what's there. And all these given things already have a structure, and I just perceive that structure. And so that's the general idea about, our experience of the world, that the world is already there, things are happening, events are taking shape, and we experience them. We go through them, we understand them, and they impact our emotions, but we just experience them in a way passively. By passively, I don't mean that we are not understanding them, but rather it's there, it's fixed, it's already structured. We just notice the structure, and that's all that is there to knowing the world and experiencing the world. We are proposing something radically different. So we are saying that yes, there are some things there, however, they don't have a structure. They are there. You structure it. And by you, sometimes we mean you individually, sometimes we mean you as
a
collective, we humanity together, we construct it. So it does change meaning based on the context. However, the general idea is that the world is, in a way, I won't say mute, it's there, but it's not forcing its structure on us. It is we who actually give it a shape and a structure. And that is why, we discussed a lot about, healing is part of understanding how I have structured that world and then reorienting myself, which is not an easy process. We are not saying that it's all very conscious. It's done all with a lot of, sort of like, I don't want to say activity, but everything in control on your behalf. A lot of these things are much more deeply embedded. However, they're all done by us humans who are perceiving and understanding this world and giving it shape, ourselves. So that's the idea we are trying to propose here, and we want to understand how loss fits into that picture.
So
do you want to add something?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about when you mentioned that it is not the reality or whatever it's out there imposing any structure or framework of understanding to us. I was thinking about then it is somehow in phenomenology, it is our mind that imposes a structure on the world.
Exactly.
So because there is an assumption that we know the world very similarly. So even when we are talking about the world, we have a same
reference point.
Exactly.
I'm talking about this mic, this glass.
Exactly,
and
same reference point.
Exactly.
And not only reference point, we are sure that the other person would exactly get the world almost the way that I do. So that's why we can understand each other.
Exactly.
Because there is an assumption that all humans interact with the world or use with the same structure of understanding when they are in the world. So rather than the world really imposing any structure on the mind, it is the mind that put the structure on the world and the reality.
Yeah, and we share a lot of commonalities, but there are also things that would be very individual, or belonging to a small group. Sometimes it might be that way. So when we are talking about we don't ever mean you as an individual deciding today that we call it glass, we call it mic. So we do share a common structure, but at the same time there are some personal elements, and that's why our experiences can be so different, although we are still in the same world. So that's really important to remember. But I like the idea of just keeping in mind that it's not the world that imposes its structure on me, it's rather my mind. And by my, I mean collectively us.
Human mind.
Human mind.
Human mind.
That imposes the structure on the universe, on the world, and we give it its structure. So that's a good way to remember it, that we impose the structure on the world. Very Kantian.
Yes, very much.
So to just think about absence in this picture, how do we, or loss in this picture, a little bit of premonition here. So Sartre gives the idea of absence, like how do we understand absence? And in general, if you ask anyone what's absence, you would say it's a negative term. Absence means that something is not there. And it is, in a way, absence is not actually a kind of a presence. It's basically just a negation, whatever is not there. So, if I say, my son is not here, I'm talking about an absence. So that's not here. It is not a positive term here as such. And Sartre just tries to explore that example with a very ordinary, concept, with a very ordinary example that I'm going to meet my friend Pierre in a cafe, and I enter the cafe, and then he gives a very huge description of, there's this patron sitting having coffee, someone is leaning over a counter, there's a cloud of smoke because people were smoking back then inside the cafe, not a designated smoking area. You can smoke anywhere. There's a mirror at the back of the wall, so everything is reflected, so the room looks really huge. So all of that is there. So a lot of things are there, but the moment I entered there, I would notice Pierre is not here. And so in this room full of presence, the absence is the most prominent feature of this universe. And everything else becomes a background in which highlights the absence of Pierre. And so how do we understand that? If absence is primarily
the negation of the presence,
why does it take such a hugely central role here? And to elaborate that further, we can even think about, so some would argue that basically it's our mind, reflective mind, understanding the world. So it's basically a kind of a judgment. And when we say judgment in philosophy, we don't mean I'm judging you, but rather,
it's
stating,
logical,
stating or noticing a reality in a way. So basically, it's a judgment that, these things are here. So the patron's XYZ is here, coffee is here, and the rest of the things are not here. It's the way our mind understands reality. However, Sartre says, or I think that's a commentator, I'm not sure who said that Pierre is not here and Duke of Wellington is not here. Both are acknowledgement of absences. Both are true. However, there's a huge difference. Would anybody say that, Pierre is not here, then the other person would say, and Duke of Wellington is not here. Are these the same kind of statement? Do they have the same force? And Sartre argued that no, Pierre is not here is a concrete absence. Duke of Wellington is not here is an abstract absence. You can talk about a million other people who are not here. And in that moment, yes, logically speaking, they are of the same status. If we are talking about what's not here, we can list all of that. But in my experience, in my structuring of the world, that one doesn't matter. Unless I was expecting him to be here. But Pierre is not here has become the biggest reality. The entire environment of the cafe is dominated by Pierre's absence. None of the presence matter. The most important factor that matters is this absence. So what we notice here is that absence actually has a presence.
Has a role.
It has a presence. It's not absent anymore. It becomes present. And it becomes the defining structure of my reality in that moment. Which is just, when you say, it's mind-boggling that it's an absence, but it becomes a presence for me. It becomes the most, prominent feature of my reality in that moment.
Sameema, you mentioned very quickly a term that, unless I was expecting Duke of I think one of the very important factors that makes an absence such a huge presence is the expectation.
Exactly.
So it is not that there are some elements in the world or factors in the world, some people in the world, some relationships in the world that are there for me, and all of a sudden they become prominent. in a way that their absence becomes somehow a presence in the construction of the world and the reality for me. But somehow there is a relationship between my understanding of them and their presence, or the weight of their presence.
Yes, and the weight.
The weight of the presence. And somehow, when they're gone, or there is a loss of them, the same presence of the same weight of the presence becomes, the weight, very weighty. Exactly, very heavy absence. So, but I think one of the things that we need to add here, it's not about absence has such a huge effect on the world, or on the construction of the world. Why it is an absence and it's not a presence is the way that I expect to be.
Exactly.
So if I expect Duke of Wellington, probably it affects me in a very different manner than not expecting him. And all of a sudden, that's why I even don't mention the people that are not there, or the relationships that are not there. The only thing that I mention is a person who I expected to meet, who I expected for him to be there. So expectation is really important.
It's, and that's where it's when we are thinking about our experience, and again we're going a bit deeper in philosophical understanding. We don't experience the world as a knower. Like, it's not a knowledge relationship, it's a lived relationship. Because if we are just thinking about our experience as a knower, there shouldn't be any difference between Pierre is not here and Duke of Wellington is not here, because they are both in equal force, equal kind of statements. What changes is that I was expecting Pierre to be here, and Pierre is not here. So that's why the weight of his absence is concrete. I feel it. I feel it. My entire reality is actually weighted down by it, because I was expecting him to be there. So when we experience the world, and that's what we mean by shaping it, through these expectations and through these what we expect it to be, we are actually building some kind of a expected ideal world that I want to see there. And when it's not there, the absence is felt so strongly.
I think if you are, we mentioned about the structure that the mind imposed on reality, or what is there. And I think one of the very important factors of that structure is expectation. So expectation is one of the elements that shapes our world. There are so many other things. Expectation is there. Being surprised that you don't have the expectation, but all of a sudden you're forced to encounter with something that wasn't even expected to be there. Again, it's the same effect.
So I expected it not to be there, and it was there.
And then we call it surprise. And surprise, it's really interesting, because we normally think that in an everyday language we expect surprise as something positive, but in phenomenology, surprise is surprise. Something that is unexpected happens. So it doesn't matter it's a positive or negative. This is another step forward. Whatever is not expected, but it's there. It makes me surprised. I feel surprised about that presence. So expectation is one of the elements of that structure that the mind actually put on the world. And now you can see how it affects the whole shape and shaping of the world around us.
It colors the entire reality for you.
So that is how the really mind imposes a structure on the world, and makes the world meaningful for us.
And I was thinking about, if when we are reflecting on this absence, and absence becoming too big for our reality, it might sometimes sound like, oh, that's a defective way of thinking, that's being unwell way of thinking. However, that's not what we are suggesting. absence or noticing absence is quite fundamental to our existence, and we can think of it, especially connecting it to the idea of expectation about a baby's experience. When you have no capacity to form ideas, have a reflective thinking, and what we know from their behavior, which has been recorded and understood really well, that the bond that they form with their caregiver, be it mother, father, whoever is around them, so the baby expects them to be with them all the time. And when the caregiver is not visible, for a baby, they're dead. If you're not there, you're dead. And that's why the baby notices absence. Because the expectation is that you are there all the time. The infant, without any conceptual, categories yet developed, notices absence because the expectation is that the presence should be there permanently, and that's why it cries, it tries to get attention. We know that if these expectations are not fulfilled, they lead to really problematic attachment styles. And so it is so fundamental, this expectation, and this absence being jarring, being a weight that is felt as strongly as the presence, is fundamental to the way we structure reality. So it's not a, what we would call like a problematic way of thinking. This is fundamental, foundational to who we are. So the problem or the challenges arise when it becomes the biggest reality of your world. And we will talk about that probably next, that why it becomes so big. But do you want to add something more on this topic?
I guess one of the things that I might pose here is, okay, this is how loss is felt. So loss will felt as an absence. Absence of something that was expected to be there. In the relationship with expectation, the presence of someone is not there. So you call it the absence of that presence.
Exactly.
So I would say why it is so prominent that that the absence, even in a relation to my expectation, to my supposed expectations of a certain presence, why it affects me that way. So it says where it is that, where it is in the human mind or the very being in the world of me has such a huge effect. What changes what in my manner of being in the world. And if you let me, I can have some a proposition from Husserlian experience and judgment really, and again get back to the German phenomenology.
We're back from France to Germany.
Yes, we're just moving in between. When I have clients, and when I think the first time that I was thinking about why, and especially when you are that in psychology of grief you have stages of dealing with the loss, and I was thinking about what is it that makes it so prominent and how I can phenomenologically understand that. There is I need to get back to a bit of phenomenological structure of identity construction so I can explain that why. In every interaction that we have with the world, as we have discussed, not only we construct the world, but at the same time we construct ourselves as well. The identity of the self is in a constant it's an economical exchange really. So this exchange, it's an exchange which is double-sided. So I change the world, I shape the world, but within this shaping I shape myself. So it's it's a two-sided
Exactly.
relationship.
And you said not just I shape myself, I get shaped.
Exactly.
Because there's a bit of like you are
Exactly.
both actively and passively.
Yes.
So if we go to existential terminology, are both subject and object.
Yes.
At the same time. So you are interacting with the world, but the world is also interacting with you.
Exactly.
And you become an object in that experience.
So it is like that you throw a plan on the world, that structure of the mind. This is it. The structure of the mind throws something at the world, and the world answers to that.
Yeah, exactly.
To that very plan that you throw at the world. Within that interaction, it gives you a response. Exactly. So you are affected by that response, and then you will initiate another response. So it's a constant relationship with the world and the self.
Yeah, we can give a very simple example. You post your picture on Instagram, really beautiful picture. So you're trying to pose the structure on this universe. I am really beautiful when I do my yoga on my wonderful yoga mat, and then someone posts a comment, says you're looking amazing. Another person posts a comment, you look fat. You're pretentious. And then I was trying to create a reality. I was trying to pose a structure of my reality around me where I am a beautiful, fit person. And then the world is sometimes fulfilling that. But even in fulfilling, it's a very different way of fulfilling, and then the world is also denying it. So at the same time, my reality is getting co-constructed. Even in that small social media space, it is getting co-constructed. No matter how hard I try, I cannot just, haters will be haters, they are jealous of me. It does impact me. It does impact my reality that some people think that I look fat, or some people think that I'm pretentious, or whatever it is. So it is, you are not going to be able to create that picture, that structure of the world on your own. It's always going to be interactive. It's always going to be
it's a very dynamic
dialogical with the world. And when we say world, we mean a world inhabited by people.
Exactly. So it is really important here that this world is inhabited with people, because it's not about the construction that it's just me making something or imposing a certain plan or a framework on the world. But somehow in that is the recognition. The only thing that can recognize me, it's not the world of object, it's the world of human being. So I need the other to recognize me and recognize the way that I wanted to interact with the world. So people here are the most important factors.
I was just thinking of when we were trying to set up the camera, the phone camera, and which is going back again to Sartre. The moment, if I think about this room, I'm constructing it. This is right, this is left, this is up, this is down. The temperature is, quite pleasant. But the moment you enter this room, everything changes. We were sitting in front of each other. You said move it to the left, and I was doing to my left. So the left has changed. The temperature might be too warm for you. So now it's no more a cool temperature. So we are co-constructing it. So we, so if I ask you, do you find the temperature is nice? I'm trying to recognize or get recognized for, the level of temperature. You might say, nope, it's awful, it's too hot. And then the reality kind of shifts. It doesn't mean that I convert to your version of reality.
No, but actually
But there's a challenge.
Pause. Exactly. You give it a pause on a cool, perfect, positive statement that the temperature here is amazing, I don't know, it's working for
me. The lighting is great, whatever it is, it just changes. And
so your judgment is not as straightforward.
Exactly. So I'm not constructing it alone. I know that the right is not this objective right. It's just right now where I'm sitting, this is right to me. It's not the objectively established, accepted by everyone right. And that just, is also an important part of our constructing the world, where others play an equal role. And and we acknowledge that, we know that, and that's why the other has such a key role in the construction of my world.
Exactly. And one of the most foundational element of phenomenology is just that human being is a relational being. It's not that it can be, you just put a human being in a total void of anything, and that human being has the same understanding of themselves as you put the person into a room full of people. And these people, and it's really interesting because even the people who are in the room, whether the gender, the sexuality, the political situation, the social, cultural, linguistic,
the age,
exact age expression of these people, again, changes the way that I experience myself. And I think this is the point that I want to mention here and introduce here. In phenomenology, we say, in Husserlian phenomenology, we say that every knowledge of the self, every perception of the self is not only the immediate understanding of the self, because I have an immediate perception of myself. I know that I exist. I don't question that. And this is immediate. There is nothing in between.
The cogito.
Exactly. That is the cogito. This is it. This is my foundation of the. I first know myself, and then I start to add the things to it.
I'm aware of myself all the time.
Exactly, and it's immediate. It doesn't have any mediator in here. And that makes it so foundational, so you can build other things on it. The same way that we discussed Descartes in our second session. So, what about that relational self then? We were thinking about human being is a relational being. Somehow, it is still, as even the immediate interaction with the self and the perception of the self, again, it's the relation of the self with the self. Again, it's not out of that relational structure, really. But there is a relation of the self with the world, with something that self is interacting with. Either it's a world of object, either it's the world of human beings, nature, whatever that this human being is interacting with.
So just let's it's a bit of a complex idea, so let's wait here for a second. So you're saying that my immediate awareness of myself is, of course, myself, but my awareness of people, things, objects around me is also coming back to myself.
Exactly.
It is again about, in a way, very self-centered about me.
It is.
Everything is about me.
Yes, everything is about me because I am only knowing me.
That's such an interesting idea.
This is very interesting in phenomenology because really the other is, I should say the complex word. We call it, in Husserlian phenomenology, we say the other is in a mode of inaccessibility. I access the world, but in a modality which is different from accessing myself. I access the world. I access the other person. I access the knowledge of the other person. But the modality that I access myself is very different from the modality that I access the world. So really, I access the person or the other in a mode of inaccessibility. It is just like, it seems that I don't have the same accessibility that I have to myself. The only thing that I have immediate access is the self. It's cogito, exactly.
So it's basically coming back to the idea that the level of clarity, the level of awareness that I have about myself is just immense. And when I know the other, when I know the world, I do access some of it. However, when I compare it to the way I see myself, there is no comparison. And so that's why Husserl proposes that the other is available to me, but partially, very
Yes.
little. So
Yes.
never think that I can know them the way I know myself.
Exactly.
It will always be
Exactly.
in a very inaccessible way. I
Yes.
access them,
Yes.
but not fully, not the way I access
it is not
myself.
the way that I access myself.
Yeah.
Definitely. So even I say, yeah, I understand you. Look, in a sympathetic way, we say, yeah, sorry about your loss. I understand. I lost my mother, for example. But again, you know, a phenomenologist would say, do you understand?
Yeah.
You will never understand because you're not experiencing this loss the way that I experience it.
And yeah, similarities do not count as identity.
Exactly.
In philosophy, even if you are twins, you shared a womb, you had the same parents, you were born the same moment, same experiences in the sense of like the structuring of the world, you are two people.
Yeah, exactly.
And the sameness doesn't count as identity.
No.
Each of them experiences
that is very
it,
important.
Yeah.
So sameness and identity are two different concepts.
Exactly.
Here. So yes, there is a sameness there, but it's not
identity,
the one.
Yeah.
It's not identical. And I think that is very important here. So part of this relationship with the world, the way that I access the world and I relate to the world, affects me in a way that not only affects me, it's just not a reflection that it's like on a mirror. It's not that. But actually it affects my understanding of myself in the world. So I'm always in a relationship with the world because there is a self who understands the world. And this understanding means I found myself in a specific way in the world with everything that I have interaction with. Look, when I moving between these two couches, the way that I experience my body moving through this is very different from just imagine that these two couches are not there.
Here.
So I experience my body within the very objective world. This is the world of objects, which are
instead of experiencing the couches.
Exactly. I experience myself, that something inhibiting me, moving it forward. You know. So this is it. This is the only thing that you experience. It's you in the world. It is really interesting. We don't experience the world as it's there. We experience ourselves in the world. You're constantly, the only thing that you experience is you. Is you in the world. That is how it's a mode of inaccessibility because it's nothing. You don't have access it. The only thing that you have access is you.
Yourself.
Your experience of this self, the manner of the presence of the self in the world. Yeah.
So would you say that in any interaction, and let's go to relations with people, like, you know, which does apply to objects as well, but in any experience that we have, every experience gives a part of me back to me. Every relationship gives me, and so you know, it feels like that, you know, in this conversation I'm getting a part of you, however I'm actually just getting a part of me.
Exactly. You only receive a part of yourself in my presence. You feel yourself in a certain way in my presence. And just that is good, and I just want to keep it here. So every interaction is only me interacting with the world, and within every bits of interaction I'm experiencing myself in a certain manner. So I'm knowing myself with every interaction better and better, or I'm losing myself every interaction. So we're going to talk about this very specificities of, for example, race, color of the skin, being minority.
That would be
that is very
a whole
important. That's
segment itself.
I think, but it's really important because that's why I say you're losing yourself. So it's not only just gaining but yourself. It's just the loss as well. So in this manner, everything that I have relationship with, including a person, and especially that peer, which is absent in the cafe, what is it that even with the expectation, when your expectation is not fulfilled and you are disappointed, the thing is you're disappointed.
Yeah.
The very emotion of that you experience in your expectations not being fulfilled is disappointment. Fear is not there. It's the immediate emotion is disappointed.
Yeah.
And then you build up on that disappointment.
Yeah.
The rest of the presence of the others.
Yeah.
So I am disappointed in expectations of the presence of something. But imagine that the whole idea of finding yourself as something is disappointed. It seems that you've been disappointed of receiving yourself in a specific manner.
Yeah.
That expectation of reception of myself is disrupted.
Yeah. So let's just like turn it a little bit, stop here and think about it in a more concrete way. So if I'm going to a cafe to meet Pierre and I don't see them there, the disappointment is coming because I entered the cafe as friend of Pierre.
Exactly.
And if Pierre is not there,
who I am.
Whose friend am I?
Exactly. Who I am.
What am I doing in the cafe?
Exactly. It's just like, it's not only Pierre not there. Actually, I experienced the absence of Pierre in the shape of absence of friends of Pierre, which is me.
Yeah, part of me is
part
absent.
of me is not there.
And it's like it becomes big because my brother is not there, so sister of X is not there, is not a big part of my identity there, because I was not expecting him to be there. I was going to the cafe as a friend of Pierre.
As a friend of Pierre.
And so my whole existence in that cafe was hinging on my being a friend of Pierre. And Pierre's absence makes my own existence, it questions.
It questions yourself. So you question yourself that, okay, who am I now? So loss and the absence or disappointment of the fulfillment of an expectation, this, you put it into that, foundational concept.
Exactly.
It's just question of your identity.
Yeah.
Who are you in every moment of interaction?
Exactly.
Yes, I have a client. I have a customer. I am a customer. I'm a customer in that cafe.
Exactly.
But was it the only thing that I was expected to be? Yes, I am something in that cafe. I am a woman. I am a customer.
I'm a person.
I am a person, you know.
But none of that matters anymore.
Yeah, because I wasn't really looking forward to that.
The most important, prominent feature of my existence in that moment was friend of Pierre.
Exactly.
I was expecting Pierre to be there, and he's not there. So my whole existence is put into question here.
Exactly.
And which is like, we don't actually behave that way as philosophers all the time. Like, however, what we're trying to highlight here, that the disappointment that I experienced there and the weight of absence becomes so present and so strong because of the level of expectation and my whole presence hinging on the idea of being Pierre's friend.
Exactly.
So that does change based on if I was expecting a particular waiter to be there, he's not there, I might be disappointed a little bit, but that's not the whole idea of my experience. I go to cafe for a good coffee, this one serves better, but that one is okay too. So mild disappointment, but not huge. However, because everything about my experience there was hinging on sitting with Pierre and talking to him and getting part of me.
Exactly, as being Pierre's friend means you were expecting to experience yourself in that conversation in a certain manner.
Yeah.
So it's a loss of expectation, not only the expectation, but actually a world of exploring yourself.
Exactly.
A world of realization, certain realization that would only happened if Pierre was there.
Yeah.
So it's just you were really looking forward to experience yourself in the presence of Pierre. That would only happen in the presence of Pierre and not any other presence.
Yeah.
You can discover yourself in that conversation and with that interaction, interaction in a very specific manner. And then the disappointment is a disappointment of, me, I was supposed to experience myself in a certain way, and that expectation is lost.
Exactly.
So that moment is grieving for the loss of a certain experience of the self.
Exactly.
So in and this is in Anthony Steinbach's formulation that he uses two senses of myself.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I have in identity construction, part of that identity comes from an immediate experience of yourself that he calls is as myself with a lowercase m.
Mm-hmm.
Another myself comes from the interaction with the world, which is other than me.
Yeah.
And he calls that myself with a capital M.
Yeah.
So that myself, the expectations of receiving self in a certain manner is disrupted.
Yeah.
Imagine that the person that you get, because look, in every interaction that myself has come back to me.
Exactly.
The capital M. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's all the time. Part of this identity is the immediate interaction of myself with the self.
It's not like sometimes I'm more like myself with small lowercase
no,
m.
It's constant.
It's constantly both of them are there all the time.
Exactly. And imagine that with every person, this myself with capital M, the size, the weight is different.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's why it's that this person, if you have a person of interest, really, it seems that it's going to be logically, that means that this capital M myself is bigger, has a bigger space, will occupy a bigger space in that identity. It's a collective identity that you have.
Yeah.
So imagine that you are losing someone important. Why? What? The way that we say important, we don't understand it. What is it, that importance?
Exactly.
Actually, really importance is rooted in this.
Exactly.
It is important because it's a huge part of the self, an identity of the self is occupied by that capital M that I receive from that person. Imagine that I am a wife of a man that I'm losing. I lost that man. A very huge part of myself as a wife is really holding on that person receiving myself with a capital M of that person, and all of a sudden I don't have that one anymore. There is no one that I can really experience myself the way that I was experiencing myself as a wife with someone else.
Yeah, so it's now unlike it's cafe, it's your world.
Exactly.
And as you were expecting Pierre to be the only thing that mattered in the cafe, in this entire world, he or she, the person you lost, they were the only thing that mattered.
Yeah.
The only thing that actually structured, or the biggest thing, the most important, the most prominent thing, like the cafe, I expected some other people to be sitting there, waiters to be there, barista to be there, as a background, nothing in the foreground. In the foreground, in the most important my perceptual field, the most important feature was Pierre. In the same way, in this world, I expected people to be in supermarkets, in schools, this and that. However, what I expected to actually be the most foundational feature of my universe was the husband.
Exactly.
Because the husband gives me the biggest part of me.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
I get because
receiving,
I'm wife with capital W in a way, because that's what made me who I am, the biggest
Actually,
part of
you
my
are
identity.
wife only because of him.
Exactly.
You are wife only because of him. You couldn't be wife
If
in
he's not
any
there.
other interaction.
Yeah.
So actually, whatever you experience yourself as in that very relationship is lost.
Exactly.
So you are losing part of yourself which you used to call being alive.
Exactly.
Losing a child, so you are losing being a mother.
Yeah.
This is not small.
No.
It's not about that person. Look, I don't want to think about whatever we're discussing here as too self-centered. But this is how we experience the world.
Yeah.
So I am in a depth sadness, and I'm mourning loss of someone, loss of a very important person in my life. Not only because we love them. Yeah, we love them. Why? Why we love them? How I experience the love. I experience the love when they return the love.
Exactly.
So
or even in loving, you kind of receive a part of yourself as I'm a loving mom.
I'm a lover. Yes, exactly.
I'm a loving wife.
Yeah.
I'm a loving sister. I'm a
Yes.
loving friend. You
Yes.
receive a part of you that matters to you.
Exactly.
So,
you become it in that very interaction.
Exactly.
Imagine that there is nothing that can respond you, not only respond you as the other person, because it's really interesting, because the very person that you have an interaction with, while gives you back part of you, actually they respond to you as well. So it's just like a double thing.
It's not just me, like everyone is doing the
It's
same.
not that they are, you imagine that they're talking. No, they're talking and they respond to you.
Exactly.
And you actually, in that response, you build yourself in the interaction.
Yeah.
So it's a double thing. It's complicated.
And they are doing the same on the other side.
Exactly.
You are co-constructing their reality.
Exactly. So I think when we are seeing the concept of loss within this framework, one realizes the weight of the experience of loss in a very, very different manner, and you give yourself a very important allowance and permission here to be affected by the loss, and affected by such a concept as absence. The way that you are affected by a concept such as existence and presence.
So absence becomes
you give
presence.
Permission to yourself to be affected by the loss, to really be shaped by the loss, and not question yourself that why should I be affected that way? Oh, this is not healthy. I mean, you just give it a pause, even questioning yourself and judging yourself. You are mourning yourself first and foremost.
Exactly.
What you experience is the mourning of the self.
Exactly. And which can never be regained.
Which cannot ever be regained. Exactly.
Even like, if you think of, for example, if someone loses a child, they have other children, but the relationship, the motherhood of being the mother of that child is lost.
Exactly.
So it's not like, if someone loses a partner, they find another one, it would never be the same. It would never give you the same self that the other partner was giving, because each and every individual is unique.
Exactly.
And so it's all about, loss is loss. Like, even if your colleague that you barely see, they move, they die, it's a loss. However, the loss is not big for you because they didn't give you a big part of yourself, or the part that they give you didn't matter so much to your identity formation. It's people who actually make big part of you, big part of who you are. When they are lost, their absence becomes the most prominent presence in your universe. And that's where we find kind of stuck. We feel we are stuck because this, in a way, it's illogical. Why there are so many presents that do not matter, this absence matters the most,
Mm-hmm.
which is illogical.
Yeah.
Absence is not being
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
but not being becomes being.
Yeah.
The absence becomes presence,
Yeah.
and it's hard to get over that absence. What we were talking earlier, that grieving is basically accepting.
Grieving is your relationship with the idea that you were never ever experience yourself with anyone else the same way that you were experiencing yourself with that person.
Exactly.
In that very relationship.
Yeah.
So grieving is really the process of making, coming to the terms with this me not receiving myself with anybody else the same way that I used to receive myself.
Yeah, I mean, I moved houses like 3 weeks back, and and the house, like Hora knows, I moved to is better than in most ways than my previous house, but I have mourned a lot because I was someone in that house.
Yeah.
I had a relationship with that house, and it's like when I talk to sometimes my husband, he feels like, "Are you not happy here?" I am.
Yes.
But it's different.
It is different. It is different.
So it's not the same kitchen, and it doesn't mean that this one is not good or bad. It has like a different. I am a different person. That part of me is gone.
Exactly.
That was working in that kitchen. That was sitting in that living room, and it's like mourning is not about that. I want to go back to that.
No.
It was just accepting that that part of me is gone.
It's gone, and it's gone forever. It's just, I think the acceptance of part of me is gone forever.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, and it's not going to be ever filled. So that absence will be. So the way I feel like, it leaves a black spot on my heart, and I have a lot of those black spots.
Mm-hmm. Everyone has. Yeah, exactly.
And as you grow up, you learn to live with those black spots.
Exactly.
And I, no matter how good a house I buy, how wonderful it is, even if I buy that one again, I try to put everything back there. It would not be. It would be a zombie.
Yes.
It would not be that house.
Yes.
So it's basically, grieving is and grieving is never going to end. I still mourn.
Exactly.
However, what happens is that absence just starts occupying a different space. I don't want to call it a smaller space, but it leaves it. Let me have room for other presences.
Exactly. I think you learn how to explore the world, plus yourself. You give the permission to yourself that explore the world in other manners.
Exactly.
So in exploring the world in other manners means giving myself a permission to experience myself in other manners as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yes, you are. Look, it's just like you are adding to the very shelves. Imagine that this self is. It's a huge library with lots of shelves, with lots of categories.
Yeah.
So you start to add to those categories. Yes, I was a wife, the category of being a wife. I'm not the wife anymore. Or even if I'm a wife sometime, if I remarry and I have another partner, I might be a wife in a very general manner, but I'm not the wife of that person A anymore. So that category is there. So when you are moving to the library, you're going back, back in the time, according to the chronological movement. You see the empty boxes there.
Yeah.
You see the empty boxes. You cannot.
And you can't fill them.
Exactly. You cannot fill them. And you recognize that those boxes are empty, those shelves are empty.
And you can't throw them away, you can't hide them. All of those are actually not accepting. So accepting is having that emptiness, that absence.
And dealing with the emptiness.
Yeah, and live with you and like you carry that pain to some extent all the time, but you learn how to live with it, how to actually make room for presences that you were not able to in the past.
Yeah.
And that's maturing.
Yes, exactly. This is how we call maturing. This is how we call healing. This is healing. Healing means recognizing that empty boxes will not ever be fulfilled anymore.
Yeah.
And I will mourn myself the way that I experienced myself in that relationship, and I would never experience myself anymore the way that I used to experience myself.
That part of me is gone.
Exactly, and you're missing yourself. I mean, missing someone means missing me in that relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
So really, I mean, yeah, when you say I'm missing someone, how? Why? Because I used to experience myself in a certain manner with that person, and that person is not there anymore. So I'm
and that's why sometimes people like, you find an element like of that person in another relationship, and that kind of fills your heart a little bit. That I feel a little bit like that person in this interaction, which is again, that person is reminding you of your that part of you, and you also know that it's not the same you. It's just a glimpse. It just helps you get a little bit of a glimpse of that person, and it's just gives you some momentary sort of a relief. However, you also know that no attempt, no effort to fulfill that gap, make that absence of presence is possible, because it's an absence now.
It's an absence. Yeah, and you realize that this is an absence, and you will never forget that absence.
Yeah. If that mattered to you, that's again, it's important to remember we are experiencing absence every moment of our life. It's all about which one matters,
I think all of them matters, Sameema.
Yeah, but like how much?
All of them matters, but I guess even when we say it's about 30 years back, I lost someone, I don't remember them anymore. Yes, you don't remember yourself in their existence, in their presence anymore, but doesn't mean that it hasn't affected you.
Definitely.
And it's really affecting you, but I'm not recognizing it.
I'm
not engaging with that.
Exactly. You lost part of you. It might not be that prominent for you to notice, but you lost that part.
Exactly.
But what we are talking here about is when we experience loss, we experience that absence of that presence of that absence. And that's where you are acutely aware of losing that part of you. And that becomes, with time, that becomes little by little less acute, which doesn't mean that somehow that loss is forgotten or fulfilled by something else, but rather you learn to just live with it and have room for other presences, and you let them come into your life with time, and it varies from person to person, but part of the healing process begins there.
I think because even when you're just get back to that example of the shelves, imagine that these shelves are really close to this existence, the entrance of the world and coming back. Imagine that it's so approachable, and it's so present and existent in the first instance that you come to the room. It's impossible you forget it.
Yeah, exactly.
The way that
it's the first thing you notice.
Exactly. It's in exactly the direction of your you're noticing.
Exactly.
You looking at the absence. I think part of healing is readjustment of the room as well.
Reorientation, readjustment,
You readjust that empty boxes or empty shelves. Whether you want to, because when we see that people are withdrawn, what is it that withdrawn? They put it at the back of the library that they wouldn't even see them. But does it mean that they haven't experienced it? No, they experience it, and it was so painful that just push it back that it is not recognizable anymore. I don't want to face it. I don't want to encounter of this emptiness anymore. it's too much of a pain handling this emptiness for me. So I just push it back. But it's there.
Yeah.
You have a room with empty boxes, with empty shelves.
Yeah.
I think with such a framework of understanding of the world, at least for me, I can understand what's happening to me.
Yeah.
When I try to analyze my experience, I realize that, okay, this is how I deal with my rooms, with my relationships. This is how I used to experience myself, but it's not there anymore. How about me letting myself experience in other ways myself?
And it would be a tedious process of going through the aspects that you have lost.
Yeah.
It's acceptance, and again, like, people will have different ways of doing it. It doesn't mean everyone needs to sit and analyze everything in detail. However, in whatever way that works for them, they need to let go of each part, or bring to focus each part that they have lost. And once they have mourned for each and every bit of that loss, probably, and that might take years, but that's the steps towards healing that we say. Grieving leads you to that spot where you have now learned that, these boxes I will carry with me forever. They will never go away from me, but they might start hurting less. They might start making my life, they would not be in my way. The moment I want to leave the room, they would not be sitting there in front of me, but they will be here. And when I return from the world, they'll be still sitting here. So that's where, you adjust and learn to live with that. And you make, that absence a part of your life.
Exactly.
But
this is how you can make the absence.
But other presences start becoming.
Because you are adding to this library of yours. With every interaction, with every seconds of interaction, you're adding to it. There are new shelves coming.
Or going to Pierre's example, if Pierre is not there after the disappointment is over, I might notice, I know that person.
Exactly. You start to allowing yourself.
Or I can just order some coffee, enjoy time on my phone.
I just want to be customer.
Exactly. So you start, once you are over that disappointment, you have accepted that Pierre is not coming, though you were still disappointed to a great extent because you were expecting some great time with them. You say that, okay, let's not get this whole trip to a waste. I can still have a good cup of coffee. I might be able to have a conversation with someone, or just sit by myself and not waste this entire experience. It would not be the same, probably, as I expected. It might turn out to be better. It might turn out to be okayish. However, it's not going to be what I came to experience here. But I am trying to make the best out of this situation.
So the unfulfillment of the expectation is there.
But if I'm consumed by disappointment.
Exactly. Am I allowing myself to
so
be
Pierre's
consumed?
absence, Pierre's absence just makes any other experience impossible. Then none of the presence can be felt. The same coffee that I was looking forward to is now no more there. The same cafe, the experience, everything is gone because Pierre is not here. So that's all about accepting Pierre's absence as a fact in a way and learning to live with it. So the disappointment will be there, but I'm open to new experiences.
Exactly. This openness is part of that healing project.
I think that's a good point where we can wrap up today's session.
I think that was a very heavy session. Not only because the whole concept of loss, while it's so clear and it's so obvious and it's so present, but at the same time it's heavy and it's painful and it's so disappointing, and it's just. But it's part of that life, It's part of experiencing itself because it is in the world of experience.
Exactly.
So in that manner, has a present all the time.
Exactly.
Because it belongs to the world of experience. Although it's a present, it's an experience of a loss and an absence.
Exactly.
So Thank you so much, Sameema,
Thanks a lot,
for
Hora.
making this happen, and thank you to our listeners to pay attention and try to, I don't know, be, accompanying us. I know sometimes we say, yeah, what are you talking about? It might be so weird, and it's sometimes it feels like it is not really easy to grasp the concepts, but we are really hoping to give the possibility of interacting with our experiencing to our listeners in a way that somehow you become yourself's analyst. And I think that's the thing. That is the whole idea of you understanding your experiencing, and you can analyze and adjust your experience, and not being only the complexity of the experience is there, but you learn to recognize the complexity and being interested in exploring that complexity.
I think, because, like, saying in the psychoanalytic term, making the unconscious conscious.
Exactly. This is it. This
That's
is
what we're trying to do.
it,
Making, like, we are doing this all the time. It's just like we are not conscious of it. So that's what we are trying to do here.
And this is the only thing that happens in therapy room.
Exactly.
Really. It's just people come to make their conscious to them. Because it happened to me, but I didn't recognize it. It's a moment of recognition, really. The therapy room is the realm of recognition.
Exactly.
And we're hoping to achieve this in these podcasts as well.
Thanks a lot for helping us create this space.
Exactly. Take care of yourself, and we will see you, and we're hoping to hear from you in the next 4 weeks.
Thank you.